And as we hit the 20-year mark, this is a triggering week for so many who lived through that devastation. And we're going to be joined with an amazing story. One of those people, one of the heroes of Katrina, really is a doctor who is a pediatric oncologist there. Her name is Tammy Singleton. She was the only pediatric cancer doctor at Children's Hospital of New Orleans who did not evacuate. The rest of her team, if you will, they left the city. She stayed behind. She was 7 months pregnant at the time, but she said, I just can't leave my patients because they were, many of them, in the middle of chemotherapy treatments, bone marrow transplants. And, she thought, if I leave, what's going to happen to them? So she went through a remarkable period with them, including evacuating them to other hospitals and also making sure that their records followed them. Because when you think about it, how were new hospitals going to know where these patients were in their treatment cycle? So Dr. Tammy is joining us to share parts of this remarkable experience. Also with her is the mother of one of her patients, Vicky Bergeron, and his surviving twin brother, Logan. Thank you all so much for joining us from New Orleans this morning. We really appreciate it. Doctor, let's start with you. We mentioned this, while others on your team evacuated, you stayed behind while you were 7 months pregnant. Very stressful time. Can you share with us why you decided to stay?
Absolutely. Good morning. When I think back on it, it wasn't a second thought. It was something I absolutely had to do. There were other doctors who were there. There were surgeons, ICU doctors, but there was no one there who knew how to care for pediatric patients with cancer, who knew how to care for our transplant patients, who knew how to care for our leukemia, lymphoma patients, and all the complications they were going through at the time. Um, Again, it wasn't a question. It was a very difficult, stressful decision to make for us, for my husband. But it was there was no thought. My husband at the time was Navy. He just looked at me and said, "Hey, I understand that this is duty, but this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do."
We're looking
We
at
just did
pictures,
it.
the helicopter there transferring some of the patients who were in your care. How many young cancer patients were you caring for, essentially by yourself as the only oncologist there?
Yeah, at that time, I think we may have had about around 20 patients on the census. We tried to evacuate or discharge all of the patients who were not necessarily as sick or who did not really need to be there at the time.
You, go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just going to ask Vicky what this means, what Dr. Tammy's staying means to her, or meant then and means now.
Oh, Dr. Singleton was our lifeline. I don't know how we would have managed without having her there by our side. When you're in the hospital for as long as we were, there are times when we were there for months at a time, you become family.
Mhm.
And the nurses and the doctors, we just all stuck together as family. And she was just amazing. And I can tell you a story about Kyle, my son,
Who was
who
16 at the time, right, Vicky?
16 fighting acute myeloid leukemia. He was scheduled to be discharged on the 29th, the day Katrina hit. And he was in isolation. And we were in our room that was right by the nurse's station. And we overheard Tammy on the phone, just distressed and distraught because she was scrambling to it sounded like she was trying to get some medical procedures done before we left so that her patients wouldn't be just hanging. And Kyle overheard her voice and how, upset she was. And he never left his room until then. And he said, Mom, I need my mask. It's his HEPA filter mask. He said, I need to go out of the room. So I got his mask, we put it on, and he walked outside and he just wrapped his arms around her and said, and they both just started crying. And he said, how much he loved her and everything's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And they just embraced. And it was just the most heartfelt moment, to see him, wanting to support her. And that's just the way it was. You know, we love our doctor. And I mean,
Yeah.
she was our rock,
Yeah.
and he felt like he needed to be there for her as well.
Logan, I know this was your identical twin brother, Kyle. You went through this treatment with him. You were a donor, as I understand it, right?
Yes, I was a perfect match for him, being his identical twin brother. So it was one of those situations where it was a tough situation because we were really thinking about a hurricane coming around the corner. But it was just one of those situations where I just had to be there for my family, be there for my brother, um, just focus on what I can do to support my family. My dad wasn't there. He took the dog to Mississippi, so just having to grow up quicker than I should have, and just be there to support there, and just having the doctors, the nurses, everybody that stayed behind, Dr. Singleton included, it just made things a lot easier just to cope with and just move through that tragic situation.
How much credit do you give to Dr. Singleton sitting right next to you for helping your brother to survive another year with his disease?
It's all the world. Um, just having that support, having somebody to fight for the patients, because a lot of times it's especially when tragedy, things get forgotten about or people get left behind. Just to have that support for people to get where they need to go to be healthy, to be taken care of, just means the world to us, my family. Tragically, we lost my brother few years later, but to have those years with him, those extended years, especially when he was in a vulnerable spot post transplant, it's means the world.
Tammy, I know you were 7 months pregnant at the time. I know you lost your baby girl about a month after this when Katrina hit. She was a
Yep.
stillbirth. Um, you feel the stress of that situation may have been responsible for that?
There was no other explanation. I continued to work pretty much every day for the 4 weeks following. It was very difficult for my colleagues to get back into the Baton Rouge area to help because there was no housing available. And I mean, everything was fine. She was moving and everything seemed fine. And I literally left the hospital that day after working that day and went straight to Women's Hospital in Baton Rouge, and she was gone. So um, I'm not the only, obviously, tragedy. This isn't the only tragedy from Katrina. There's so many other stories of lives that were significantly impacted, and I definitely count Megan in that number. So.
Well, we want to thank you so much for joining us, all three of you. We know you went through a lot. And I know, Vicki, you told me last night, it always feels like just yesterday to us,
Yeah.
even though 20 years has gone by. Also want to mention, Tammy, the Hero Project Network out of New Orleans, which is preserving stories of heroism like yours through storytelling. So kudos to them for bringing your story to us and bringing it to light. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Allison is here too. We just appreciate you getting up early there in New Orleans to join us here on Connecting America. Just so much that they went through. That's one family's story of what happened when Katrina hit.
Yeah, the spirit of New Orleans remains alive, Allison.
I mean, guys, that I can't imagine a story that better highlights the human devastation of Katrina. I mean, she's a hero. Obviously, Dr. Tammy is a hero, and the toll that it took on her and her child and her family that she waited there. I mean, I remember being 7 months pregnant. It is not easy to be in an emergency and run around and have to be on your feet all day for days like she was, and not evacuate, and the stress of all of that. And that Vicky's family credits Dr. Tammy with keeping her son alive for another year. That is just remarkable. And as you say, Jim, that's just one story. I mean, there were thousands of those during Katrina, and just the toll that an emergency like that takes on everyone.
Yeah, we thank them so much for sharing, taking the time to share with us what they went through. It's just remarkable.